up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new Ionic quick win. Today we're using once again Ionic Angular and we're gonna build something on our own. So in the past we have developed a selectable search component with a package. I think we did this actually twice, but the package is a bit outdated and I want to show you a very simple way how you can build your own reusable searchable select component. Because we're using Angular 14, we can do all of this in one single standalone component, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna love this. If you want to check out the full source code, link below the video for all Ionic Academy members, and if you are not yet a member of the Ionic Academy, go check it out right now. IonicAcademy.com, the place to learn everything Ionic. But now let's dive into this and build a pretty cool component. Alright, so let's get started with our application. The only thing we need for this is a blank new Ionic application. I'm using Ionic Angular here, and then we can generate one new component under Components Searchable Select. Because our application is using Angular 14, we can also use standalone components, so we don't need to create any kind of module, which is actually pretty cool. On top of that, I just made a few tiny changes. So first of all, I added the HTTP client module to the app module, so we can make an HTTP call in a second. And then I didn't really change a lot in here, but I just want to show you that right now this is our application. And we can see we got a default homepage, and under components we got our searchable select component. Now out of the box there's not a lot in this component. The searchable select works, so let's try. We can put this on the screen. To do this, let's go back to the searchable select. Actually, this is the TS, we would just scroll down. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna say standalone true in here. And because we're using standalone true, we can actually also use imports in here, which is quite cool. So we can add our imports array here, and therefore we're gonna later put in a few things like the Ionic module in here once we need them. Now, in order to use our component, we can now go to our home module, so just the module file of our page, and add to the array of imports. Can we just please format this a bit nicer? How did I call this? Searchable select component. So we're directly importing the component, no module. Okay, with that in place, we can close home module. We know usually this is called like app searchable select, that's the name. And we can put this into our page here, probably not like this, more like this. And voila. We have our component displayed without any crazy module import export stuff, just a standalone component. However, this is of course not really the finished solution, but we need more. So I already added a little HTTP call. You could also use dummy data, but I kind of like to use this data as well. It's just really nice. Let's put a little log in here. Most likely my head is now covering that log, right? So I'm gonna put it here. So this consists of just example data like this. Data you would get from your API as well, data for which you need to specify different keys. So this is gonna be really interesting how we're gonna set this up in our component to make this as dynamic as possible. So we got the data in our homepage, and I think we can close this for now. And in here, we're gonna change this a tiny bit. So we're gonna make this an Ion item, because usually you have this inside an Ion item, and we have a select like select user, and then we're gonna throw this searchable select into this. That is already a good start. What we need is a way to open this. So now it begins. We need to dive into our searchable select. And to actually open the searchable select, we want to use an inline modal. That's going to be quite easy, so that means we also don't need any additional pages. So let's put an Ion modal right in here, and we're going to make this dependent on a variable is open, which we will still need to define. So let's bring up also our implementation here and set is open to false. Now we're going to add a function open, which will, guess what, set this dot is open to true. And we can probably already do another for let's say for cancel. So for cancel, we will also just close it, is open false. And then we probably have another function to confirm our selection, which will also close it, but might have some other, let's call this select, might have more functionality in the future. So let's go back here. We should have this. Okay, now it begins. Ion modal is not a noun element. So this is where we can use the imports of our standalone component. Let's just put in Ionic module, and I know we're gonna need the common module and the forms module as well. And we could just easily put this in here. On top of that, we might want to keep track of the selected entries, so we can then also display something. For now, let's try to put the modal on screen. So for the header area of the modal, we can do an ion. Do I got something for this? Like ion header? Yeah, that's quite nice. We probably want to have a dynamic title for the ion header, but we can go with test for now. And then we need a way to open the modal. Now, how do we approach this? Well, we already have a function to open this in our searchable select component, and we can actually call that function from our homepage. So in order to make the whole item clickable and not just a little part in here, we're gonna give this a template reference called select, and we're gonna add a click handler to our ion item, which says select. And then we see we actually get access to the functionalities of our component. I sometimes really love TypeScript. I'm gonna add tappable to the ion item. I don't know if I need this. I probably don't need this. And then it opens something. I'll also add the tappable. I don't know if we're gonna are removing tappable in the future. We don't really need this. Okay, so we got the connection here. That is pretty nice. The modal is opening, but I think this is kind of wrong setup. So in the modal, I think we first need ng template, and then we can put our stuff in here. So then we should be able, yes, to see our test title. And of course, we can throw in the buttons. So we're gonna have the starting slot with a cancel button, and then we're gonna have the end slot with a select button. We gotta call this select. And of course, we want to make the title dynamic because this should be a reusable component. So let's add an input to our searchable select. Input from Angular core. We're gonna call this title will be a string. We could also set this to a default, like, I don't know, search something. And if we do it like this, we already get the title in here. That looks nice. On top of that, I will just set the toolbar color to primary as well. You could also make this dynamic for this example. I will just leave it like it is. So we got the toolbar in blue, we got cancel, and we got select, and that's pretty cool. So we're getting closer to our finally finished component. What our component, of course, needs as well is another input for the data. So this is going to be an array of any kind of data. Besides that, I want to define two more input fields. One input field if you want to allow multiple selection in a list, and another one that is required to actually access the item. So in our case, where's my log? The users we get back from our API. Let's put this here once again, this.users. So we got an array of data, but what I really want to display in the list is actually hidden under name.first, or you probably have some other key. So we need a way to access that key, and this will be the item text field. And we're gonna come up with a little logic to access that data now. But before we do that, we should probably pass the information to our component from the homepage. Where's our homepage? Here. So within the homepage, we can now extend this. We're gonna set the title to select user or select users. I don't know, don't really care. I'm not gonna set multiple, we're gonna handle this in the end, but we definitely want to set the data to our users. And on top of that, I want to set the item text field to and now it's name.first. So this is going to be interesting because by default you can't easily access the data. We're going to see this, but we're going to come up or find another solution. Okay, so our input has access to the data, which means we can now iterate the data. So underneath our toolbar, underneath the header, we're going to add an ion content, and then just ion item ng for let item of data, and then we're going to add let's use an ion label for now. And let's directly do this, because I know it's item.name.first. We're gonna try it like this first of all. So if I do it like this, I get the right list. However, we want to do this in a dynamic way. So that means I could potentially use something like this item. Oh no, of course not item text field. At least that was what I thought in the beginning I could use. However, I was very optimistic. This doesn't work. Now, instead, I'm using a little function that I actually found on Stack Overflow. So I'm going to copy this. It's in this thread here, in this answer. So accessing a nested field, there are different solutions, but I actually highly enjoyed this one. So I'm taking this one, and then we will be able to access a leaf simply like this, based on our example. So this would be our item, and this would be the path to the actual property that we want to access. We're going to do it a bit easier. So let me bring in the new leaf function. Let me present you this. So based on our item text field, because in the original example, it's passing an object and a path to it. But actually the path is already in here in the item text field, so I just simplified it. So we can use this leaf function now in our view. So let's change this, leaf, and then we should be able to dynamically access this data. And why is this pretty cool? Well, let's see. Let's say we don't want to use name first, we want to use name last. Now we just need to change what we pass to the component, and we get completely different data. Or I could actually, is there like a third level of nesting? Yeah, probably. Let's try location.street.name. Location.street.name. And voila, we get all the streets. So this is a very, very versatile implementation for our component, and I think this is really helpful for our case. However, we now go back to the case of selecting a user, and what we of course also need is an ion checkbox slot start. You could probably also make this dynamic if you want to have it in the beginning or the end. We're just going to go with this one. And of course, ng modal. I'm just going to set this to item.selected. So then we will be able to filter this out. Not terminated. Yeah, that's cool. There we go. And we can select how many items we want. However, we should also get a function or trigger a function once we select something. So let's use the ion change of the ion checkbox and set this to item selected, a function that we now need to implement in our class here. So let's do this, item selected. And on item selected, what we want to do is we simply want to filter our data and see which of the items is selected. Then I'm also going to set this to my, actually I can set this directly to this dot selected probably. And what we want to do as well at the same time is we want to output the event, but probably we shouldn't do everything at once. Let's do the selected fun first. Because right now you can select something, you can select, and you don't really see anything appearing in here. Usually you have something in there. And we can do this outside of our Ion modal and simply check if we currently have some data. So if if our selected has a length, which means the array has some kind of data, we're going to do something. Otherwise, we're going to display a placeholder. Okay, yeah, the placeholder doesn't exist yet. ng template and this is our placeholder. We're gonna just call the placeholder, I don't know, select. So that means in the default case, we should see our placeholder. Once again, you could make this dynamic with another input, and then you can pass the data to your component. You can make also the cancel buttons, and if you want to display buttons, or if you want to have a footer element, you could make all of this in the most dynamic way you like. But I think this should cover like 80 to 90% of our cases. So when we have some kind of selected data, what we want to do is we want to display which of the items is selected. So I'm going to go with a span ng for let item of selected. And if I now just put in item.name.first, we're going to again see, or hopefully see, some data. Of course, we want to make this a bit better. So therefore, we're going to use our leave function, which makes use of the key we define for this. And eventually, I also want to separate this with a comma. So I'm going to figure out if something is last. So let last equals is last. We can use this from Angular. There we go. And then we simply put after the name, if something is the last. We of course don't want to display anything. Otherwise, we want to have a comma separation. And then we can do a few items and they're nicely separated. Actually, I don't want this space in here in front of the comma. So now, yeah, this works better. Nice. Okay, we made already a lot of progress on this. Now we just need the logic to also output the events, to handle the multiple field, and then finally to search data. Now, to output our data, we're gonna add something called an output event emitter. We can import everything from Angular core. So event emitter from Angular core, and at output, didn't you add that? Property members should be declared before all. Okay, you want to have it declared in here, no problem. So now we can emit new values to our event emitter, and we're going to do this whenever we select something. So if item selected is called, we're going to say if not this dot multiple, we actually want to close our item. So we want to say this dot is open equals false. And before we close it, we also want to say this dot selected change emit new value, this dot selected. All right, that's cool. So that means right now, so a multiple should be false. So whenever I select one item, it should immediately close the view. Probably we could also do something up here about the buttons. So only display them if multiple, because otherwise you can't actually, well, you can use cancel. So we should allow cancel as well. But confirm doesn't make sense if you only can select one and then it already closes. Ooh, this is a nice bug. Which also something is already added. We're gonna get to that in a second, but for now we're gonna keep it like it is because we also want to subscribe to this output emitter. Because just having it in here is of course boring. So let's go to our home page, and there we're gonna add this selected changed, and then we're just gonna call select change and pass the event data to the function. And then for now, let's just put another function in our home page, and then we're going to say log changed event. So just showing that we are actually able to get that data, and there is the changed log, and then we got access to that one little object. However, probably after closing it, we should also reset our searchable select component. So whenever we close this, is open false. We should maybe set this dot selected to an empty array again. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna select Jim. Okay, Jim is selected. I'm gonna open it again. Jim is still selected. That's great. Why is Jim still selected? Well, most likely because the data input didn't change. And therefore we kinda need to iterate our data again. So map and set every item selected to false. Okay, that's not required. Let's see. Gym selected. And now gym isn't selected anymore. But we actually got the changelog. So yeah, the problem is and this dot selected dot length. Yeah, just trying around to fix this issue. So now it changes. The problem is now that if we set selected to an empty string, I'm trolling myself because now I don't have a value in that field. Okay, we're running around in circles. So for now, I'm going to keep it like it is. I'm going to figure this out later. However, we are able to use this select in the basic way. Now let's also add search bar. So to do this, we're going to go back to our HTML. And I'm going to put this simply in the header area. I'm going to add another toolbar in here, which usually works quite nice. And within, I'm just going to put an ion search bar, and ion change will trigger a function called filter. I'm going to pass in the event. So there we go. And now another little trick for you. There is actually a cool event called search bar custom event. However, usually your UI will or your editor will complain about this. So see here. Okay, I didn't close the tag. Yeah, that's cool. But this is the problem. Argument of type event is not assignable to type search bar custom event. And this is also an open bug. So I think it will be fixed in an upcoming Ionic version. For now, you can surround this with any, or you can disable the strict template check. Doesn't really matter which you're using, but this is a little fix. So then we can get the actual filter string that we're using, and then we got our search bar up here. Actually, that search bar needs a bit more padding. So let's go into the SCSS and add padding top. Yeah, that looks better. However, you can also, of course, style this even more if you want to. But now for our filtering, what we want to do is we want to filter out the data. So we should actually introduce something next to data. Let's call this filtered. So that means if we want to make our whole view dependent on the filtered field, I'm going to do it like this, whatever. We're going to do some filtering, and then we're going to replace data with filtered. However, this is going to show us another problem because we're not setting the filtered data in the beginning. And we can't just use the constructor because we're making an asynchronous call. So what we need to listen to is a change to one of our input fields. And we can do this not with on init, but on changes. And then instead of using init, we're going to use ng on changes. And within here, we are now able to set our filtered data to this data, because this is the point where the input is actually changed. You could also, well, I think, yeah, this should work. So now if I search for something, okay, I'm going to break my whole logic if I'm not using, probably I should just set this to a multiple for now. We're going to eventually figure out the little fix in the end. So let's say, because we have such a cool versatile component, we're going to set multiple to true, and now I'm allowed to select multiple. This is pretty cool. I should maybe open source this. But anyway, this is easy and you can just customize it to your own needs, and you see you're going to do this in 20 minutes or most likely even faster. Now for filtering, all we need to do is we just need to iterate our data. This data filter, and we're going to go through every item, and for every item what we want to return is this leave, so getting the actual value of the item. Then I'm also making it to lowercase just in case, and then checking the index of filter is greater or equal to 0. So super easy comparison. Property leaf does not exist. I probably messed up some brackets somewhere. Actually, we can do this in one line. We don't even need all the stuff going on in here. So let's do this in one line. Visual Studio, yeah, that works. Okay, so let's see. Let's search for something nice. It seems to work. And it's immediately in there because we're filtering our data here. This is really cool. If I click select, I don't see any select log, most likely because on confirm or on select, we should also apply our logic to retrieve all the selected items. And from there, we should once again also emit our changes before we close the view. So let's see, 3 selected, and then we get the 3 changes in here. Very nice, very nice. Can I go back to 2? Yes, and then I get 2. So for multiple, this works very nicely already, I think. Now let's just figure out how we can fix this for the single selection, and then I think we're pretty much done with our example. So let's quickly think this through. We can't change our selected because then we can't reset this to 0 in this case. However, once we bring back the view when it initializes again, we want to change. At which point do we want to change this? So this is correct. Okay, when I open it up again, it shouldn't immediately call the item selected, but it does call the item selected because something is selected and it immediately triggers our item select. Oh, this is strange. Let me give this a thing. All right, I did a bit of refactoring. So instead of applying directly a handler to the checkbox, we're going to add a click event to the Ion item. So then this function won't be always called from the checkbox, and we still have the click event. Now in the item selected, we pretty much only cover the case for not multiple, because if we're having multiple, we don't really need this handling anyway. So if I set multiple to true, I can just select whatever I want and it won't change anything. However, again, if I set this to false, we're going to enter this iteration here, this if, and we first of all set the previously selected back to false, and then we apply the same logic like before. And as a result, we can now select one. I'm going to have Jim, and then I can go to Alexandra, and it just immediately switches to the new user, and we got only that one result. And with that in place, I think we have covered everything for our custom searchable select. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick win. It was kind of different quick win because we really got our hands dirty and worked a bit with Angular and components and a lot of cool things. So if you enjoyed this quick win, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button so you get notified about upcoming videos. And of course, if you got any requests for more tutorials like this where we build something together, just let me know and leave a comment. Otherwise, I hope you can put this component to use in your projects. I would love to see if you release an application where you use this pattern. So drop me a link or tweet me something, and then I'm gonna hopefully catch you in our next video. So until then, of course, happy coding.